Let me ask you something. What is a show worth when it is technically over, has not aired a new episode of its main series since 2022, and still pulls in nearly 500 million hours of viewership in a single 6-month window? Because that is exactly what The Walking Dead did on Netflix in the second half of 2025 alone. 500 million hours. That is not a dead franchise. That is a sleeping giant. And right now, that sleeping giant is sitting in the middle of a bidding war. The Walking Dead streaming rights are up for grabs. AMC's deal with Netflix is expiring, and the number being thrown around to lock down those rights is upwards of $300 million for a show that ended 3 years ago. So today, we're going to break down exactly what is happening, why it matters more than most people realize, what it could mean for the future of every Walking Dead show in existence, and why one very specific outcome from this situation could be the thing that finally gives us the Walking Dead adaptation we actually deserved from the beginning. There's a lot to get into, so let us start at the beginning. Okay, so first things first, let us kill the most common misconception floating around right now. AMC is not selling The Walking Dead. They're not giving up ownership of the franchise. They're not handing the keys to someone else and walking away. What is actually happening is a streaming rights negotiation. And yes, there's a very important difference. Here is how this works. AMC owns The Walking Dead. They own it outright, but the license to stream it on platforms like Netflix, that is a separate deal. And that deal is coming to an end. Back in 2011, AMC signed a landmark deal giving Netflix the rights to stream The Walking Dead. At the time, it was a massive move. Breaking Bad and Mad Men had already proven that putting AMC shows on Netflix was basically a cheat code for building audiences. People would binge the back seasons on Netflix and then come back to AMC for the new episodes. It was a perfectly symbiotic relationship. That relationship has now lasted over a decade. But the current cycle of that deal is expiring, and the 177 episodes of the original series are going to return to AMC's direct control in less than a year. So AMC CEO Kristen Dolan gets on a call with Wall Street analysts earlier this year, and she says they are in conversations about what comes next. She confirms the rights are, quote, very valuable. She does not confirm who they are talking to, and she makes it clear that a new deal is coming. Now here's where it gets interesting. AMC has signaled they're open to what they're calling co-exclusive deals. This means instead of one platform getting all the rights, the library could be split by territory, by platform, or by content type. Netflix might get the US deal. A different service might handle specific regions where Netflix does not operate. And AMC's own streaming service, AMC Plus, remains the home for new and current content. The people in the running? According to industry reports, Netflix again, Amazon, MGM Studios, potentially HBO Max, and various international partners who are already part of AMC's global distribution network. This is not a fire sale. This is a franchise that knows exactly how valuable it is, choosing its partners very carefully. And those partners, depending on who wins this, could change everything about what Walking Dead looks like going forward. Now, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough in Walking Dead conversations. Money. Specifically, how the budget or the lack of it quietly shaped almost every major criticism people have about this show's history. Let us go back to Season 2. Season 2 of The Walking Dead is one of the most divisive seasons in the show's entire run. Half the fan base says it is hauntingly beautiful, slow burn, character-driven. The farm sequences gave us genuine tension and some of the most emotional moments the show ever produced. The other half says it was boring, repetitive, and that nothing happened for too long. Here is the thing almost nobody talks about when that debate comes up. Season 2 happened the way it did because of a budget cut. After Season 1 was a runaway hit, AMC fired the showrunner Frank Darabont, the guy who created the vision for the show, and simultaneously slashed the budget per episode. The production literally could not afford to leave the farm. They were stuck there partly by narrative design and partly because moving around cost money they did not have. That is the origin story of the most common complaint about Season 2. The pacing was in significant part a financial decision. Fast forward to Season 8. The all-out war arc Rick versus Negan. On paper, one of the most epic storylines in the entire comic run. In execution, it became one of the most criticized seasons ever. Fans called it repetitive. The battles felt underwhelming. Characters would walk into obviously terrible situations for no reason. And the whole thing dragged out across 16 episodes in a way that felt exhausting rather than epic. And again, budget, time, resources. The war between two massive communities with dozens of named characters, vehicles, explosives, and large-scale battles requires a level of production that the show simply was not getting. Now compare that to something like Game Game of Thrones in its middle seasons, or Band of Brothers, or even what we have seen recently with The Last of Us on HBO, which reportedly cost around $10 to $15 million per episode in its first season. The Walking Dead at its peak was somewhere around $3 to $5 million per episode. The difference in what you can put on screen is enormous. So when we talk about what a new streaming deal worth $300 million means for The Walking Dead, one of the very real implications is that AMC now has serious leverage to demand bigger budgets for whatever comes next, or that a bigger partner brings their own resources into the franchise, that we have already seen what happens when you underfund ambitious Walking Dead ideas. The question now is what happens when you properly fund them. Let us take stock of where the franchise actually is right now, heading into the back half of 2026. Dead City Season 3 premieres on July 26th. That is confirmed. AMC locked that date in May. The show has a new showrunner, Seth Hoffman, a longtime Walking Dead veteran who has come back to the franchise after years away. Maggie and Negan are back in Manhattan, and despite not knowing yet whether this will be Dead City's final season, the production has wrapped and the show is coming. Daryl Dixon season 4, that one, is confirmed to be the last. Norman Reedus has already said goodbye to fans publicly. Filming wrapped in Spain in November 2025. Sound post-production was completed in May 2026. Fall of this year is the expected window for release. And the mission of that final season is straightforward on paper. Get Daryl and Carol home. The ones who live one season done. It was always structured as a limited series for Rick and Michonne. Whether it was a satisfying conclusion or not is a matter of very active debate. We'll come back to that. So that puts us in a very specific position. By the end of 2026 or early 2027, both of the currently active Walking Dead shows will be finished. And at that point, for the first time since October 2010, there will be no Walking Dead show on television. 15 years of continuous content, and then a gap. Now here is the part that should actually excite you. Scott Gimple, the chief content officer of the entire Walking Dead universe, said at an anniversary panel last October that he could see this franchise running for another 15 years. He described more continents to visit, more ways to evolve the characters, and more stories to tell. He is not talking about recycling the same format. He is talking about global expansion of a universe. And on top of that, industry insider Daniel Rickman reported in late 2025 that AMC is developing a crossover spinoff, one that would bring together the casts of Dead City, Daryl Dixon, and the ones who live in a single series. Think about what that means for a second. Rick Grimes, Daryl Dixon, Maggie Green, Negan, Carol, Michonne, all back in the same story. Gimple himself told TV Line that he has been planting, in his words, breadcrumbs across all the spin-offs leading toward this potential moment. He has not confirmed a timeline, but the groundwork, apparently, is already being laid. Andrew Lincoln has confirmed there are active conversations about bringing Rick back. The character appeared in voice form in a video game DLC in January 2026 non-canonical. Sure, but Lincoln is clearly still connected to this universe. And the door that was left open at the end of The Ones Who Live is wide enough to drive a tank through. The question is whether the streaming rights situation gives this potential crossover the budget and platform it actually needs to be something special that I have to talk about The Ones Who Live. I know this might be a slightly uncomfortable topic for some fans, but I think this is genuinely important context for where the franchise needs to go. When Andrew Lincoln left The Walking Dead in Season 9, it was announced that he would return for a trilogy of feature films. Not TV movies, not a mini-series, films. Scott Gimple described the project as dark and more sci-fi based. There was even a teaser trailer released that involved Universal Pictures. This was going to be a major cinematic chapter of Rick's story. That did not happen. What we got instead was a 6-episode limited series. Now, 6 episodes versus 3 movies on paper, that sounds like more content. And the people involved in making it, including the actress playing Michonne, publicly said they wanted more episodes and more budget, but were constrained by the limited series format. Here is where I want to push back on something I hear a lot. People say the episode count does not matter, because 6 episodes can be just as long as 3 movies. That is true in runtime terms. But what you lose when you go from theatrical release to a limited TV series is not just prestige. It is budget scale. It is the kind of production infrastructure that Universal Pictures brings to a project. It is the pressure and resources that come with a cinematic release window. The Ones Who Live had good things in it. The world building around the CRM was genuinely interesting. The idea of Rick being this broken, brainwashed soldier who barely remembered who he used to be, there are moments in that show that are genuinely compelling. The scenes where Rick would start shaking and twitching when the CRM's ideology was being explained to him, because he had been so thoroughly conditioned, that is the kind of psychological depth the character deserved. But the resolution came too fast. Rick recovered his sense of self more quickly than felt earned, given how thoroughly he had been dismantled. And the ending, while not bad on its face, did not feel like the conclusion to a 15-year character arc. It felt like a chapter, which maybe is exactly what it is. Because if the crossover spinoff rumor is real, Rick is not done. But here's what I actually want. When we see Rick Grimes again, I want us to find a man who is still not okay. Not fully recovered. Still carrying what the CRM did to him. Because the most interesting version of Rick's next chapter is not the triumphant return of the sheriff. It is a man who escaped something, who technically survived, but who is still putting himself back together piece by piece. That is a character worth spending time with. And with a proper budget and a proper platform partner who brings real investment to the table, that is a story that could be genuinely great. Now let us talk about the thing that might be the most interesting long-term possibility that nobody is centering in this conversation. Robert Kirkman wants to make a Walking Dead animated series. That he has been saying this for years. Back in the letter column of The Walking Dead Deluxe in 2024, he said, and this is the important part, that a faithful animated adaptation would be great, but he does not think it is possible until he gets the rights back from AMC. Then in early 2026, he doubled down on that statement. Still wants it. Still blocked by the right situation. Skybound Entertainment, his company, has confirmed there have been developments over the years toward making something like this happen. His editor has said there are plenty of people at Skybound who would love to make it real. Let me give you my honest breakdown of what I think this moment calls for. First, the crossover needs to happen, and it needs to be properly funded. The spin-off era has been, to put it plainly, scattered. Each individual show has done interesting things, but none of them have felt like they are part of one cohesive universe moving towards something. Gimple says he has been planting breadcrumbs. Okay, then use them. Bring these characters back together in a story that actually matters to the overall arc of this universe. Do not make it 6 episodes with a modest cable budget. Make it an event. Second, if Rick comes back, do not rush his recovery. The most compelling version of a Rick Grimes return is a man still visibly shaped by what the CRM put him through. The CRM broke him down methodically and thoroughly. That does not undo in a few weeks because he found Michonne. The psychological weight of that experience, if a future show actually sits with it and explores it, that is some of the most interesting character territory this franchise has access to. Third, seriously consider the animated route. That if AMC and Kirkman can find a deal framework that makes the animated adaptation possible, that is one of the most valuable things this franchise could do right now. Not as a replacement for live action, as a parallel track. Invincible and its live-action movie adaptation are going to coexist. There is precedent for this. A faithful animated Walking Dead adaptation that finally gives us the full comic story with Carl, with the governor done properly, with events that the live-action show had to skip or alter. That is a project that would bring back every fan who drifted away and attract new ones who never watched the original series. But with bigger budgets cannot just be a number. They have to translate to screen. More money spent on production design, on filming locations, on larger ensemble casts, on the kind of cinematic scope that makes a zombie apocalypse story feel genuinely dangerous and real. That is what changes the quality equation. The Daryl Dixon show going to France was a step in the right direction. International locations, different visual contexts, a sense that this world actually continues past the places we have seen before. More of that. Here is what I want you to take away from all of this. The Walking Dead streaming rights situation is not a death notice for the franchise. It is the opposite. It is the universe reorganizing itself around a recognition that the franchise is still genuinely powerful. $300 million to stream a show that ended in 2022. 500 million hours watched in half a year. A creator who still wants to tell more stories. A showrunner who has been quietly building toward a massive crossover for years. In an animated adaptation sitting just on the other side of a rights conversation that is currently being actively renegotiated. The franchise is not fading. It is preparing for something. What that something looks like depends on decisions being made right now, in boardrooms and contract negotiations that most fans are not paying close enough attention to. But the ingredients are there. The audience is still there. The stories worth telling are definitely still there. Whether this moment leads to something that genuinely delivers on the promise of this universe, or whether it leads to more of the cautious, underfunded, play-it-safe storytelling that has defined some of the spin-off era, that is the real question. And honestly, given everything we now know about what is actually at stake in this negotiation, I am more optimistic about the future of The Walking Dead than I've been in years. Or is it just money moving around while the actual quality stays the same? And if you could greenlight one Walking Dead project right now, animated series, crossover event, Rick Grimes' return, brand new story entirely, what would it be? Let me know.